Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. And with me tonight, as always, my good friend Drew Crawley. Drew, how are you?
Hey everybody, I'm doing well. Winding down our Sunday evening the way we always like to, little food, little whiskey, little music talk. It's going to be a good time.
Hey, before we get into everybody else, I want to bring this up. Tell us about Stuck.
Yeah, so this past Friday, as we're recording this, not as it was released, but July the 8th, we put out the first single from my next record, which will be out early next year. So, really, really excited to get that out into the world. A lot of momentum that happens anytime you can start releasing and promoting new music. We're going to have some more studio time, some more shows, all kinds of exciting stuff coming out with that. Really proud of that song. It means a lot to me personally. So,
Mhm.
excited to have that out there.
Awesome. Hey, and a guest host with us tonight,
What's up,
the
guys?
alchemist himself, Alan Bishop.
Yeah,
Welcome.
that's a glad to be here as always, and that you guys continue to let me come on here regardless of my personality. Just throwing that out there.
Well, pre-show it was said that you were known by reputation,
It,
and
it was it
and
was
it's kind of a coin flip there, wasn't it?
it really was. That could have went either way. I mean, the odds were not in my favor, that's for sure. And today has been a side B kind of day. The first half of the day was hungover, and then the second half has been pretty decent.
Good, good. Well, let's continue the pretty decent side of this. Uh, our guests today are Hunter Coffey and Walter Zausch of Three Boys Distillery, and we'll get to know them here in just a moment. But before we get into that, we want to tell you a couple things. We want to tell you that we are a part of the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart is a collection of good friends that have some really good shows. In bourbon and whiskey content and other things, Distillers Talk, which is a show that Alan Bishop hosts with Christy Atkinson. My Whiskey Den airs every Monday night at 9 o'clock. You have Pat and Ben and Mike on there. Then you have our show, Bourbon Turntable. Our shows drop every Wednesday, and you can see us on YouTube or on your favorite podcast network. And we have one more very important message that we want to share with you.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell notification to find out when new episodes are coming out, which do come out every single Wednesday on all of the services: Spotify, Apple Music, Google, maybe Amazon, definitely YouTube. And always hit that like button, but hit it an odd number of times, so then that way it stays as a like.
Duffy Woad says the greatest promo man of all time, Mike Bozak.
Mike is very faithful to come in and just give us that minute segment every single show. He's very, very dedicated, and we really appreciate that.
The Cal Ripken Jr. of our shows.
He
Always
really
there.
is. Isn't he? Really
Never
is.
miss a game.
Always here. I love it. Hey, we're going to talk some about Three Boys. And we've got Hunter with us, we've got Walter with us, and this will be a lot of fun because we've talked with some folks that were distiller owners, but I think this is the first time we've had a distiller and an owner both on at the same time. So hopefully this doesn't devolve into some sort of job evaluation for Hunter, but wherever Walter wants to take it, because I think he's the guy that signs the checks.
To be fair, prior to this, I thought Hunter was just making Walter up. I didn't think he existed because I'd never met him. So
the job evaluation thing's off the table. I got it. Okay, good.
But let's talk a little bit about Three Boys. And while we're doing that, Drew and Alan, I gave you guys a sample of a little bottle that I thieved myself, which is part of the beauty of Three Boys. And this is 66% corn, 15% rye, 14% malted barley. It's a 7-year, 116 proof bourbon. So pour that in your glass and let's go to work on that a little bit. But before we get into any kind of comments or tasting notes on that, it's kind of an interesting situation because Hunter, you're kind of the long-term guy there at Three Boys. How long have you been there?
Total now, consistently 7 years.
7
And
years.
3 years I was at Wild Turkey, but
Yeah.
coming back intermittently.
Yeah. And I believe Three Boys is celebrating a 10-year anniversary this year. Is that correct?
September 17th.
September 17th. Awesome.
I think we're going to make it a week-long thing.
Terrific. Any special releases during that time, or are we just going to have a big party?
A little bit of both. We're going to have some 10-year-old barrels out. Well, really, it'll be 9 and some months, but it won't be exactly 10 because he didn't start distilling day one. So it'll be almost 10-year-old stuff coming out.
Awesome.
Well, and the anniversary date is specifically the date the federal government issued our license. So there's no way we were distilling before then. I mean, obviously. So,
No, of course not. No one would ever do that without government approval. So, one of the unique things to me about Three Boys, there's several things, but one thing that I wanted to make sure we talked about tonight is the a number of mash bills that you must do through that distillery, because you do a lot of contract distilling, correct?
Yes.
So how many different mash bills have you run in your career there? Any guess?
Now, with this last run I just did, over 105.
Wow.
Okay. How many distillers in the country can say that they've distilled 105 different mash bills? I mean, is that would seem to be rarefied air for that, correct?
I don't know. Your small distilleries, I think, would be around there too, especially early on. Your bigger distilleries are not going to be, because they kind of already have their mash bills in place and they know what they're doing. We were doing a lot of different stuff and playing around quite a bit early on, and still to get to do that a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I've read, and Alan, you probably know more about this than I do, but I've read that in the early days of distilling in Kentucky, the mash bill was usually composed of whatever the harvest, whatever the yield of the harvest was. They'd literally kind of take it and proportion it out, and that made up the mash bill for that, for that particular year, that particular distillation. So we kind of take that approach, probably even a little bit sometimes too, Hunter, where we're kind of like, yeah, I think that sounds good. Is it? Are the percentages add up to 100? Yep. Okay, let's do that. That's great.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's one of those things that gets overlooked. But the mash bills weren't hard and fast back then, and this is where craft distilling goes back to pre-industrialization, and none of us are really doing anything that new. We're just repeating what was happening in the 1850s, 1840s, 1830s, and those guys they were changing up that mash bill every year, depending on the quality of their grain, the quality of their malt, and how well converted it was, and not only that, but was the wagon that brought the grain in completely clean, or was there 2% oats in that mash bill on accident? So,
now Walter, I believe you bought Three Boys about a year ago? Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit, almost a year and a half now. First of all, thank you guys for inviting me. Thank you to Hunter for letting me do this. He doesn't normally let me talk about the distillery, so I appreciate it, Hunter. I feel privileged because Hunter realizes that really my superpower is debt at this point. That's kind of what I bring to the deal, and so, but I do, but I also am the music nerd, and so when we were having to educate Hunter even this week on some basic music knowledge, he's like, man, I better call in some support on this one. And so anyway, and then I apologize, guys, that I'm sorry I'm in a car. We had an event that we were sponsoring tonight in Louisville that was actually scheduled for last night, and it got pushed to tonight because of the weather. And so anyway, I'm kind of found myself in a car. So hopefully, anyway, I apologize for that. But
no, you're doing
I'm
great.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. So you've owned the place about a year and a half, and before that, you've got a kind of a varied career. You didn't start out in the whiskey business.
Yeah, no, I started out I went to architecture school at UK originally, and then moved to California, discovered I really didn't love the practice and profession of architecture, and I ended up in technology, and did that most of my career. And so I don't know, we moved back to Kentucky in 2013. I went to work for a startup in Lexington. I live in Louisville, and I was working for the startup in Lexington, and really got the bug to work for myself after 15 years in sort of corporate America. And I was watching, I'd always been a bourbon fan. In fact, when we first moved to California, there was, almost none of the brands that you would assume that would have been distributed in California were distributed there. I mean, I would go home and people say, "Can you bring me a bottle of Woodford Reserve?" Like that was, a big deal. And so I would. And so I was kind of a bourbon ambassador to the state of California a long time ago. And I've done a lot of exhaustive research on the drinking and tasting of this product. And so when we moved back, I was kind of looking around going, man, I live now in the Silicon Valley of distilled spirits. And so I was like, there's a business in here somewhere. So I actually started creating a little wholesale company, and I was buying and sourcing some barrels. And as you guys know, and I'm assuming most of your listeners know, you have to do all the labeling and storage and all that work in a bonded facility, licensed bonded facility. And so I met Ross, who was the founder and previous owner of Three Boys, and he really gave me my start. This was about 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And so I started sourcing some barrels. At that point, my biggest claim to fame, I think at the time, was convincing some of these brokers to sell me small quantities of barrels. They kind of laughed at me when I first said, "Hey, could I buy like 5?" And they go, "No, nobody buys 5. You can buy 500. And I'm like, "I don't need 500. I need 5." And I said, "Come on, there's a rounding error there somewhere. You got 7 barrels that someone's forgotten about. You can sell them to me." So anyhow, after being probably just annoying, frankly, to these guys, they finally started agreeing. I said, the problem is you haven't figured out how to monetize that problem. Like, you can't charge, don't charge me the same way you're charging the guy who wants to buy the 500 barrels. Charge me, to where selling me 5 makes sense for both of us. So anyway, so I kind of started doing that. And then, anyway, got to know Ross. And then, Three Boys is has been traditionally for our previous 10 years, very heavily reliant upon tourism and visitors. We still have exclusive distribution rights on our property and our property only. So if you want a bottle of what you guys are tasting tonight, as you know, you got to come there and get it on site. And so in any case, COVID was particularly hard on that whole P&L when you're running a business like that. And so Ross pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I think I'm the Three Boys, for which the farm is named after, are Ross has triplet sons, and they're 17 years old, doing what 17-year-olds do, and none of them have career aspirations in the distilling industry." And so Ross pulled me aside and said, "Hey, man, I think you should buy this place. I think you really like it here." And I said, "I do like it here." And so then that's when we drank a whole lot of bourbon. And it got to sound like a better and better idea as the night went on. And the next day I discovered that I had committed to buying a distillery, and it's been an awesome thing. And Ross has been a great mentor. Of course, I've had Hunter teaching me so much every single day. And but it's been an amazing year and a half, and it's just getting better and better. So anyway, that's kind of the story on how I came to the Three Boys.
Ross didn't even start it off with, "Hey, give me your wallet and let me stab you in the leg," huh? Just
No. He had said that to me in previous occasions, but not that night. And then my wife, she was like, "How about we buy a Corvette or a boat or something sensible like that?" And or both, yeah, exactly. So anyhow, but it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
I gotta ask, did she know? Did she know the night that you agreed to buy it, or was it one of those things like the next day where she was like, "What'd you do?"
It was definitely the next day. Like, what'd you do? And,
Right.
so, as chance would have it, though, and this is what's crazy, is my wife, who stayed in architecture, now works for a firm in Louisville, and she's the senior architect for distilled spirits at that firm. And so she also has found her way into the distilled spirits world. So,
Cool.
which kind of means I kind of have an architect consultant on staff, which is
There you
also
go.
kind of nice. Yeah.
That works. That works.
Yep. But you got a hell of a distiller on staff. I'll tell you that right now, for sure.
Yep.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'm the luckiest distillery owner in Kentucky, I think.
Walter, you're also involved in Watch Hill Proper, the new club out on the East End. Is that correct?
Well, involved as you know, any other sort of industry person, but they reached out to us when they were first starting, and kind of came out, sat down with us, said, "Hey, this is what we're doing, and you know, would you guys like to be a part of it?" And so we had some of their early member events, like early members, like when they first, you know, their first, I don't know, 30 or 50 members, whatever it was. We had some events out there with them and helped them spread the news. And so now we're industry members and very supportive of those guys. Love what they're doing. I mean, I get to taste something that I never thought I'd get to taste every time I go out there. And so it's a great place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really cool. I feel like they're really setting a new standard for, you know, you mentioned Louisville as the Silicon Valley of the distilled spirits industry. That is one of the destinations now. And it's really cool to see how many people are a part of it. Everybody, you know, from yourself to Jim Rutledge to podcasters and YouTubers and everybody that kind of makes this industry special and what it is, get involved with something like that. It's really cool to see.
They've even got Alan Bishop out there now. So
Right? They
Yeah,
even
we
let
don't,
me
we
in
don't
the
talk
damn
about
place.
that.
I didn't think I'll see you across the river.
Every once in a while, man. I mean, the only reason I go across there is because technically Louisville's part of Indiana. If you guys get to claim MGP,
Oh,
we can take
shit. Here we
Louisville.
go again.
Oh shit!
nobody wants to claim MGP. I'm sorry.
Right? I don't know. I remember specifically seeing a particular personality saying that it might as well be part of Kentucky. So that's my deal. If you get MGP, then we get Louisville.
He was wearing his ascot too tight that night. So
It's
Right.
also Ross and Squib now, guys. We got to update our terminology for 2022.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I still want to say Seagram's every time. I mean, it's still on the building. So
so at one point, I thought of Three Boys as the best kept secret in Kentucky bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the case at all anymore. Anytime you go out there, especially if you go out there on a weekend, it's just packed. I mean, it's those little drunk driver vans, you know, the designated driver vans are everywhere. And, you know, you've got probably 4 bachelor parties going on at one time. So the notoriety of the place has really taken off. I think part of that is due to the tasting experience that you have there.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the way it's set up anymore. So it's a little bit dated, but the picture on the right is just showing some people thieving their own bottles there, which is a terrific. To me, anybody that says, "Where do I need to go in Kentucky?" I tell them, you need to go to Three Boys. It's the best tasting experience in the state. But this was actually a photo kind of cropped out on the far right is Mike of My Whiskey Den. And he was fuming because the guy that's actually there thieving out of the barrel, you can see how wet that barrel is. And he's just spilled whiskey all over the place. But all that being said, the tasting experience at Three Boys is fantastic. It really, really is. And I don't. Who came up with that idea? How did that come to be for you guys?
Hunter, you want to take that?
Really, Ross did. He started that pretty early on, before I think anyone even thought of it. Really, in any part of the industry, he was doing it back in probably mid 2013. I mean,
Wow.
of course, it's like year and a half year old stuff, and he was just because he didn't do any clear spirits. We didn't ever do any vodka, gin, or anything like that. So it's just straight, just whiskey the whole time and flavored whiskey, and that was it. So that's how we did our money in contract distilling. So he's trying to push out product as soon as possible. He started doing it out of the barrel, and that was one of the things that kind of got people to buy stuff, was being able to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kept him alive for a while.
Yeah.
And then Walter, he just kind of exploded it. He monetized it and made it a lot more streamlined and more clean.
Well, and it occurred to me when I first went down there and I saw him doing that it was like I had been invited not long after we moved back to Kentucky with a friend who was picking barrels at with Four Roses, and got invited to a barrel pick for a liquor store, and Al Young was there, and it was such an awesome experience. And I was like, holy cow, this is the coolest thing you can do. And I just thought it seemed sort of unfair that you had to be like that. Normal mortals couldn't go and do that. Like, you had to be aligned with a retailer or a distributor, and everything was allocated. And if your retailer and distributor didn't have the right seniority, then you weren't getting to do that. And it just seemed like so great, and so when I saw Ross doing that, it just sort of clicked, like, oh man, this is the experience. And being there with Al Young, tasting out of those barrels was just unbelievable. And so I was really, anyway, yeah, I was really drawn to what Ross was doing. And, but that was definitely him who did that. And I will say, as an owner, there were some, and I say this now just because I feel a little better about it, but there were some, after I bought the place, there were some sleepless nights because there are opinions that maybe we shouldn't be doing that, and that and so we have talked it over with some legal counsel, etc. And I sleep a lot better knowing that we're doing it the right way, and that we're following the right protocols, doing all the stuff. Because I didn't really know that when I bought it, so that was a little bit of a thing, and there's probably some debate with people, but anyway, we're pretty proud of that, and I think it's definitely kind of a claim to fame that we sort of hold dear.
You got to go through the culture shock a little bit. And then the other great thing about it is too, I mean, it's a super cool experience for people to be able to do that. And you're right, people like that. And a lot of people don't get a chance to do that at most distilleries. And then on top of it, to have Hunter there, and I know Hunter basically at this point lives at the distillery, right? And if there's a question, he's right there. He's going to answer it. He knows the answer to the question. He knows how things are done and why they're done that way. And I think that makes it super special for people to come through. And it's a very unique experience that even at a lot of the other tours that do bottle your own, distiller may not necessarily be there to talk all the time, but Hunter's probably usually around there somewhere to answer a question. So
they can find me.
Right. Just call for the dogs. Hunter follow.
But the last few times I've been there, I'll say this: the staff that you guys have that are working that work that tasting area, they're great. They know what they're talking about. They're all very friendly. They're very helpful. And there may be, 24 guys in 3 different bachelor parties that are crowded around those barrels, but they're very patient. They're very helpful. They're enthusiastic and enjoying the fact that people are enjoying that experience. So that says a lot, especially in 2022, to have that kind of staff on board.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd say Walter, one thing he made mandatory for everyone to hear is to become Stave and Feast certified. And I think that's helped a lot out too.
Mm-hmm.
And then because we've had people come in that may not have been very knowledgeable about bourbon, and now you can't learn enough. And it's kind of cool to see that fire lit underneath of them.
Yeah, and I met a guy. Kind of when I was doing the wholesaling gig that had worked in wine for a long time, and he was at Behringer for 25 years, and he's written a book, and he's got a real strong philosophy about why people taste what they taste and why they like what they like. And he's done all this research with this. There was a woman who was a researcher in Cornell, and she did all this research about just the number of taste buds per square centimeter on a person's tongue, and the different sensitivities that people have. And this explains why some people like certain things that other people don't. There's also a genetic layer why some people can taste cilantro, others can't. Right. So there's these kind of different layers about tasting. And so that's something that I kind of went way down, when I pre-owning a distillery, I went sort of way down this path on researching this and reading. There's some really cool books about that. So one of the things we try to do, and people always say oh, why is barrel number 3 the best? Or why, well, we design those barrels, we design them as a flight. And so there's specific things, we're trying to introduce high proof bourbon at the beginning, kind of warm up your taste buds and do all that. But we are really, really okay with, healthy debate and disagreement about which barrel is the best, right? So people are saying, oh, I think barrel 4 is the best. No, barrel 2 is the best. And there's something there for everybody. So and this is, I don't know, it's partly just because of how Ross was doing things, how Hunter was doing things, all these, these myriad of mash bills, but that we've not, we don't, and I think this is true for a lot of craft guys, not just us, but that we don't have a flavor profile that's tied to our sort of marketing goals, let's say. And so, one of the things that we really try to reinforce with our team there is don't tell them what they're tasting. Let them tell you, because everybody's going to taste something different. And I think the minute you say, oh, this reminds me of oat bran muffins that my grandmother made in 1978 or something like that, then you immediately eliminate all of those people who are going I don't know, I don't get oat bran muffin. I'm not tasting. I don't know what, right. I must be stupid, or I must not have a palate, or I must not be tasting things correctly or right, or whatever it is. And so, I think one of the things we really try to reinforce is no, it's just, you do you, man.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, Walter cut out there for just a second, but
that's what he was saying.
There he is.
He's back.
What Walter was saying there is one of those things I think is super important for craft distillers, though, too, especially on the small batch side, is having those unique barrels, those unique profiles, right? And I've discussed this with people in my company, tasting staff, but also people that are now on barrel picks, and they don't know, they've not been around the industry, right? And so there's one of them in particular that I've had to pull aside a couple times when there's a group of people in there tasting barrels and say, hey, no, shut up and listen. Don't just be blurting out what you taste. You just be quiet and you listen, and you'll learn from it, because you're gonna start picking up on things that you didn't taste before, because they're gonna say things that you didn't pick up on before, right? So just they're picking the barrel. Let them do it. Your job is to facilitate that and hang out and listen to what they say.
Yeah. So, speaking of listening to what you say, let's talk about this this bourbon you guys have in your glass. What are you thinking, Drew?
Yeah, I get a lot of some of your traditional bourbon notes, the caramel, vanilla, all that, but underneath that is a lot of subtlety. I pick up a little bit on the fruitier side, and that may just be where my palate's at today, but I get kind of like a Bartlett pear, Gala apple kind of brightness. And then the back end is a lot of espresso, maybe some leather kind of a thing. I'm picking up on some of that. I also get just a little bit of some spice. It's not capsaicin, like jalapeno kind of spice. It's more on the mintier side of things. Almost, I hate to toss this out there because I know we just talked about shutting up, but basil or thyme, something that kind of brightens up. So really, really like it. I like the subtlety and kind of that undertone things this brings. It's pretty unique.
We're gonna have him write our description on all of our whiskeys.
He could do it. He's very good. He's very good. What about you, Alan?
So on the nose on this one in particular, I get almost like that kind of buttered and kind of brown sugar kind of dinner roll sort of thing up front.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the palate, so I do get the espresso on the finish that you mentioned, Drew, and then also that herbal thing that's there. To me, it's almost a little bit more like the old fashioned like horehound candy, kind of leans in that direction, or maybe even a little bit menthol. But then there's also this really gorgeous note that I suspect started out as kind of that diacetyl like buttered popcorn thing, but now it's more like buttered sweet corn down the middle of the palate before the finish.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I like one of the things that I think is fun that I really enjoy when I find that in a whiskey is that horehound candy note, because it's different. It's not necessarily my favorite flavor, but I love it when I find it in a whiskey, because it's something that I can kind of gravitate to, kind of brings back some memories from younger days. And
Bran
that's
muffins from your grandmother in 1973.
I remember
I think
that
Jolie made those 1973.
my grandmother had a candy bowl that had a little horehound candy in it, and you pick one up and they all come up with it because they're all stuck together. But yes, that was there. And it's the caramel note. It's almost like your caramel, you're caramelizing sugar in a pan, and you're almost got it burnt, but not quite. You're just kind of pushing the edge of it. I kind of get that there. It's almost a burnt caramel note in there. It's really, really good. I enjoy this one.
Delicious.
It's very good.
Really delicious. The subtleties are what makes it one special. Like you were saying, that the butter note, the espresso thing, the herbal. Yeah, it's all of what's underneath that first sip that really transforms this into something complex and beautiful.
Yeah.
That herbal thing too, for me, it even long after the finish, there's still that herbal sort of characteristic that just kind of hangs out there, and it's reminding you that you just had a drink of something really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like you get. It kind of comes in waves. There's that butter, and then there's that basil, and then there's that butter, and then there's that basil, and it really lingers on. So.
Dang, I want to try this. This sounds great.
I've got about that much of it left. So, Walter, I'll meet you at the distillery sometime. And
Perfect. I love
it. And again, part of the thieving your own, you can't see it on the camera, but there's nice little floaters in there of the char, which is always very cool. So.
Yeah, none of my the Three Boys stuff that I've got ever lasts very long, including the that rum that you had, and I'm not even a rum drinker, and it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Hats off to Mr. Coffey.
Yeah, that was the problem I had in finding something in my cabinet. When I get it, it doesn't last very long. So fortunately, I had this little jewel here. So.
You got to do what I do, Kevin. I figured out a new strategy. I forgot to tell you this last show that we did. So my strategy is wait until you're good and drunk, and then find a bottle that you know that you're going to destroy and hide it somewhere while you're drunk. So the next day you don't remember. So that when you find it, it's like a little gift to yourself.
It's a little gift to yourself. Great. That's a great idea.
It's like put it on allocation in your life. Like allocate it.
Yep. I don't open this door very often. So next time I do.
The problem is that there's a chance that the wife finds it, and I already get in trouble for having whiskey in too many cabinets and drawers and closets.
I've just thought about the horror story that I've written for your life, Kevin, because here's what I thought now that I've said that, and you said worried about your wife finding it. I'm like, Kevin's going to hide a bottle in his attic, and it's going to be a Clark Griswold Christmas thing going on where he just gets locked in the attic, finds the bottle.
I think you've got a premonition working there.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about some of the history there. We've talked about one of the whiskeys. We've all tried that, and everybody agrees that it's fantastic. So what's the future for Three Boys?
I'll let Walter take this one since his wife's the architect.
I mean, the future. So right after so as you said, the best kept secret. I still think we are that, especially in Kentucky, because majority of our visitors are coming from other states, and but in any case, they right after I acquired the place, and probably a month in, as the word started spreading, they're like, oh, that's that new owner guy, whatever. The people who are sort of loyalists who've been coming there for a long time or Hunter's fans, and they'd come up to me and they're like, you're going to screw this place up, man. I just know you are. Like, you're going to change everything. And what are you changing? I said, well, that's not my goal. My goal's not to change everything. I said,
the internet.
They're like, well, what have you changed? And I said, well, we added wireless, we had Wi-Fi down here, and they go, see, you're already changing stuff. And I'm like, it's invisible, right? I mean, it's invisible. Like, you can't, but I can at least check an email, because Ross had there was nothing. There wasn't even a printer, a laser dot matrix, inkjet, anything on the property when I bought the place. We couldn't print a bill of ladings. We couldn't print anything, right? It was silly. So we had Wi-Fi, but that was the first horseman of the apocalypse in some of our customers' minds, was the Wi-Fi. So the goal is really not to change, is to maintain. I think the goal for me is to maintain the smallness, to maintain the tradition that's been there. Do we need to grow? Yes. We're not distributed. And that was a kind of a Ross thing. Will we be distributed? Maybe at some point. Right now, it may not make a lot of, it doesn't, it's not a math problem that sort of works out yet in our favor, just given our size, our inventory, all those kinds of things. But anyway, so, I mean, the goal is to kind of try to stay the same and grow simultaneously, if that's possible. And we want to definitely make more. And Hunter's like a thoroughbred, right? So he wants to run and distill all the time. And so as the debt guy, as I mentioned that before, my goal is to let him distill as often as he wants. So I think production is definitely a big focus. We've kind of gotten to the point where we probably can't grow the tourism much past where we are, and that's okay, because it feels pretty good. We have a second tasting spot now, and that's really allowed us to kind of keep the same. We haven't actually grown the level of demand too much, but it's allowed us to have the same, demand, but with twice the sort of tasting supply, if that makes sense, which means it's a better experience for everybody, and it's probably a little more authentic, and they can all have their own personal experience with it. But I think that's the goal, is to grow production for sure, while maintaining kind of the same feel and spirit and authenticity and all that we have right now. So
I think that what you just said, Walter, is super important. And I think that's something that a lot of the craft distillers overlook right now. In particular, everybody keeps wanting to go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's great to have those aspirations, but I think there's something to be said for that authenticity, and then getting to a point where you're almost a cult favorite, right? And then now you've got bespoke spirits that people are going to go out of their way to get. They'll pay more money for. They appreciate more, and they appreciate in a different way than they do if they can go down to Total Wine and pick up whatever bottle is on the shelf. And I think that there's a business plan there, and I'm not a business person. Obviously, I don't own anything. There's a business plan there that often gets overlooked by a lot of people that get into this business. There's something to that works extremely well, especially now with, kind of local food movement, being tied to a local food shed and local culture and all that stuff. There's a thing there that can work that is not being exploited the proper way by most distilleries, and you guys are doing that the right way.
Thank you. I totally agree. And when I kind of came into this thing and I was looking at the craft guys, it's like I feel like the craft guys are trying to run the same playbook and business model as the heritage distilleries. And I mean, it's not the same business. I mean, I can make 1,000, 1,200 barrels a year, and it's in a pot still. And so everyone's going to be a little bit different, or sometimes a lot different. And that's with Hunter really pushing to get to 1,200 barrels a year. Right. So and what Heaven Hill can do that in a day or a week or something like. So it's a completely different unit economic for those guys than for craft guys. But I always felt like these craft guys all are trying to model their business off heritage size distilleries, and I just think it's a whole different math problem.
They are, and that's something, not just kind of a shameless plug for the other show that I'm on, but we've talked about that on Distillers Talk in the past. I think that's a mistake that people that are getting into the craft side right now are making. You can go to 8 or 9 different distilleries right now between Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, maybe Tennessee, and they're all laid out the exact same way. They all have the same fermenters. They all have the same grinding equipment. They all have the same still. They're all buying the same product from the same place. They're all replicating those exact same mash bills. There's only so much market for that. And 4 or 5 years from now, I think some of those guys are going to be lucky if they're not selling their equipment off, to be honest with you.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know, but
you guys are taking a different approach to it, and it sounds like you're going to continue that feel. And I think that's the word for it is there's a feel at Three Boys that you don't get at other distilleries, craft or otherwise. And just because of that experience, you feel like you're part of it. And that, I think, creates a little bit of an ownership feel to it. You know, you're buying into it, and you want to see the place be successful. You want to tell people about it. Hey, look at this bottle that I got to fill myself, and that's contagious.
Yeah, I think so. And Kentucky has its own kind of mid-South brand of hospitality. Not really in Indiana so much. Indiana doesn't really have much hospitality, but Kentucky has. I'm just kidding. Sorry. But Kentucky has it, and so I think we try to embrace that. We try to embrace that and tie that into the product and tie that into the experience. And so, a little shameless plug there for Kentucky.
I just want to point out that not all of us up here are Larry Birds and John Mellencamp's. Okay, some of us are decent human beings. So, not many, but a few.
Living in your pink houses. To bring it to music. Let's bring it to music.
Which I've still never seen, ever. Not once. I'm still waiting to see. That's my ultimate Indiana postcard. That's what I'm going to patent one day. I'm going to find a pink house that has a garage with a basketball goal. There's my postcard.
Now, are there plans for expanding product lines or doing anything else different down the road, or where are you headed?
Well, we just did our first gin last week. So, other people, I guess, do clear spirits first, and then they work on their bourbons and whiskeys. We did 10 years of bourbon and whiskey, and now we're just getting to gin. So I don't know. It turns out Hunter and I did a little horse trading at the ADI conference when it was in Louisville for a 70-gallon still. And there was probably some drinking involved in that story too, that I recall. But in any case, so we ended up with this little 70-gallon still, which turned out to be a prototype, little still manufacturer in Nebraska called ABE. And anyway, turned out to be kind of a little bit of a prototype for them as well. So we've been kind of working out the kinks and all that. And so we finally got they sent us some new equipment that was supposed to go in it that was better than what they originally had put in it. And so we got it going, and Hunter and Kelly, I guess I could say Kelly Tennille, did our first gin. And it sounds kind of bad to hear your boss say I had low expectations for it. So Hunter, I don't mean it that way, but I had no expectations for it. I was really just wanting us to see us make something on that still. That was my goal. And the product that came out is pretty darn good. And so I've got some good friends who are way as opinionated as everybody on this call or this podcast is about bourbon. They're that opinionated about gins, and it passed those guys' tests. Yeah. So anyway, that's one thing. And then we've got some other things we're playing with.
I'll tell you as a distiller real quick, just to jump in here. you couldn't pick a better team than those two distillers that you have on site. Legitimately, those Kelly and Hunter both. As far as I'm concerned, that's the cream of the crop right there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Wonder
Well,
Twins now.
They crushed it. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
I had nothing to do with it. I just watched. I supervised. It was all Kelly.
Everybody knows the role.
He's so modest.
All right. So we will kind of start wrapping up this part of the show, side A of the show, as we call it, and begin to transition to the music part of things. And Alan's kind of fallen off here for just a second, but we'll take this moment in our break to promote Alan and the Alan Bishop Experience, which is a documentary that he has just released. Bo Cumberland, who has done many documentaries on distilled spirits, he did this for Alan. It basically takes you through Alan's background and history as a distiller, from the days of distilling in the woods to distilling legitimately, let's say. And it's a fantastic show. You can watch it on YouTube. And one thing that Alan has encouraged folks to do is to make a donation to Michael Stallings. Michael is a wonderful moonshine distiller in his own right and a musician, and he is dealing with some very serious health issues right now. And I believe there is a link, if you go to the Alan Bishop Experience on YouTube, there's a link where you can contribute to Mike Stallings. Alan's back. So Alan, I was just telling everybody about the Alan Bishop Experience and how they can contribute towards Mike.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a link, I believe, on most of the social media posts about the Alan Bishop Experience. It goes directly to Mike and Saunders' PayPal, or you can go directly to Mike and Saunders Stallings on Facebook, and you'll be able to find the link there. The other thing I wanted to point out with our good friend Mike Stallings, who's also excellent friends with Kelly, so they are ordering some new Moonshine Mike shirts and hats and stickers and all that stuff, right? And as you guys know, that anything medically that's super important in the United States is super expensive. So if you can sort of chip in and buy something and get some great merchandise and support that guy, go for it, because he's one of the best good people I know in the world. So
very true, very true. Thanks, Alan. So let's talk music. And so when we have guests on, one of the first questions that we ask is, what was the first album that you bought? You guys remember that, Hunter, Walter?
I do.
Yeah.
Backstreet Boys.
Well, I can't remember. It's because I think I bought.
Walter's holding his breath. He's holding his breath here now. He didn't know what Hunter's going to say.
So Black and Black. So AC/DC, and then Smash Mouth. So those are about the same time. I don't know which one came first, but it was those two.
Is there anybody keeping Gibson guitars in business more than Angus Young, with him sweating all over the electronics and breaking those guitars every night? I think he's the sole reason why Gibson still exists.
That and 9 Inch Nails just destroying guitars every night. That's the two that keep them going.
Yep.
Walter, how about you? You remember your first album?
So I'm probably going to date myself multiple times throughout this next segment here, but so I grew up at a time where, first of all, Star Wars was a big deal for the age of the person that I am. I was Star Wars is a big deal. So, and you couldn't. I know this sounds crazy, but at that time there was no, once a movie was gone, it was gone. And so you couldn't, there was no VHS. There was no, you might get the ABC Sunday night movie, might get that's the first time I saw Jaws. I remember it was on the ABC Sunday night movie. But anyway, and so it started with soundtracks, really. Like I was kind of a soundtrack nerd because you can sort of relive the movie. But then if I had to think about what are the first sort of like pop music or rock and roll kind of music things. I remember buying Michael Jackson's Thriller on cassette. I remember that being a big deal. The Def Leppard Pyromania album. I've never gone on the record, I don't think, ever having told anybody those two things, but I guess it's too late. I can't rewind here. And then the Xanadu soundtrack. I know that's going to really but the entire second side. First of all, Olivia Newton-John was hot. I think we can all agree on that. The whole second side of the Xanadu soundtrack. I'll explain this to you later, Hunter. The whole second side of the Xanadu soundtrack is all by ELO, and somehow I got really into that. The second side of the Xanadu soundtrack, which kind of led to an obsession with the Beatles, which has carried on through most of my life. So anyway, but yeah, that was some of the early purchases.
I'd forgotten about Xanadu till you mentioned it, and
it's embarrassing.
Okay. Wasn't the first album that I had, but I remember having the Grease soundtrack. Okay, so there's another little Olivia Newton-John intervention into our show. Do you remember your first concert,
Hunter?
Mine was pretty sure it was George Strait. No, it was Garth Brooks.
Oh wow.
Garth Brooks when they came to Lexington.
Yeah.
My parents took me. I was young. I just remember all the red light up roses everywhere. That's pretty much all I remember.
Oh man. So Hunter, you're about my age. This is a game my friends play. So Shag, Marry, Kill. You got George Strait, Garth Brooks, and Alan Jackson. If you're gonna have to pick the 90s country legends, who are you going with? This is not the direction you probably wanted this to go, Kevin. I apologize, but
listen, you break out that chest tattoo and you answer this question, Hunter, right now.
That's right, Hunter.
So George Strait would have to be
job
married.
evaluation part.
Yeah. Okay, marry George Strait. That's correct. There are wrong answers here. So
what else did you say? Who else?
Garth and Alan Jackson.
Alan Jackson would probably have to be Shag, and Garth.
You're killing Garth, huh?
All right.
So we've got an entirely new segment for the show now. So this will be fun.
My apologies.
I love it.
Thank you, Drew, for taking the heat off of me. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
greatly.
I'll be on the shit list now. Thanks.
Yes.
I hope my list includes Olivia Newton-John.
First concert, Walter. Can you remember it at this point?
Yeah, so I was in the third grade. A friend of mine's family won tickets to see Willie Nelson. I grew up in Henderson, Kentucky, so we saw him at Roberts Stadium in Evansville, Indiana. That was my first concert. Yeah. That was still with the red, white, and blue guitar strap and the long pigtails and the whole deal. Yeah, and I was probably absolutely oblivious to all the pot smoke around me at that time. I had no idea what world that was.
No, I just saw Willie 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that. Man, he's incredible.
Wow.
I would have killed to see him back then. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, what music kind of shaped you as a young person, Walter? What were the things that you found yourself going back to, or what were the things that intrigued you? You said you're the music guy at Three Boys. So what kind of hooked you in from a music standpoint?
I like really all kinds of music, and but when I was fast forward from the ELO and the Grease and the Olivia Newton-John stuff, but also something that happened in my generation was the Walkman. And so everybody, wanted a Walkman. The actual Sony Walkmans were terribly expensive. And but I agreed to do like a whole summer's worth of chores and to get my first Walkman. Hunter, this was a portable cassette player, so with headphones. But anyway, and so my mom took me to the Walmart there in Henderson and to buy me essentially the Panasonic equivalent of the Walkman. And she said, but I get to buy the first tape. And so she bought the Beatles 20 Greatest Hits on cassette. And I probably listened to that compilation, like just flipping it over back and forth, probably, I don't know, for 9 months or something, like hundreds of times. I don't even know how long. And so that is, the Beatles have been, I'm still just like an avid Beatle nerd. And so that's a big impression, but I'm a big music nerd. I like kind of post-punk, like late 70s post-punk stuff. And the 80s were awesome. The 90s were great. Like 2000s kind of lost me a little bit, but anyway, so yeah.
So the post-punk thing, I'm curious, like leading in the new wave and all that stuff. Like, any particular band there that you're big on, or?
All of them, like the Clash, Talking Heads, Squeeze. Who else? We were talking. I was actually having a conversation at this event tonight about Echo and the Bunnymen with a friend of mine. Like the Police. Yeah, see, Hunter's. I might as well be speaking French right now.
Right.
So yeah, all of it.
The easiest way to get into Echo and the Bunnymen, Hunter, just so you know, is that I'll just send you a bottle of absinthe. You get super drunk on absinthe and you listen to Echo and the Bunnymen, and you'll get it.
That's it. The Cure is probably a little bit that way too. We could do this.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so as a Beatles fan, 2 questions then. What is your favorite Beatles album?
Gosh, I knew I was going to open myself up to that. I like the 65, 66 Beatles stuff. I think the best. So like Revolver, Rubber Soul era. Yep. Although I'll go like hard in the paint on Let It Be and all that. And then I'll go back to like the earlier stuff. But I think if I really had to boil it down, like I was on a desert island kind of situation, it'd be like Revolver, Rubber Soul era.
Yeah. That was kind of a real high point for them. I think I'm kind of partial to the White Album as well. But okay, so and this is the Rorschach test for any Beatles fan. Who's your favorite Beatle?
George Harrison. All day long.
Okay, so we have a vote for George.
Yeah. Second.
Okay, 2 for George, 2 Georges. Okay, that doesn't surprise me too much. Hunter, do you know who the Beatles are?
I know some of their songs.
Okay.
I think 2 of them are dead.
You're correct.
That's good.
You're correct.
Maybe 3 if you buy into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Well,
it's true. I just watched that.
Yeah, that was I buried Paul. That it was a great rumor to start. So Walter, who's your favorite Beatle?
Gosh, that's tough. It's tough, man. I've seen Paul McCartney several times. His solo, all of his solo work post Beatles, I'm a big fan of too. But I mean, spiritually, George, it's hard to beat George. It's a toss up. You could ask me tomorrow, and I might answer differently. So
so
I'll go Ringo.
Ringo. Hey, Ringo just had a birthday, by the way. So
that's how you dodge the question. Say Ringo.
Tangentially music-related question here, and this came up on the last episode, but I have to because George Strait and Alan Jackson and Garth Brooks came up, and I feel like both these guys can answer this question too. 78 to 88, square body trucks, Ford or Chevy?
Chevy. K10.
Yeah,
I had my first car was a 1987 Chevy Scottsdale, so I'm going Chevy.
See, there it is. There it is.
Coming
Made up
back.
for that Stumpy's Ford comment.
And that's why you're on the show.
Right.
You're on the show. So what are you listening to today? If we got if we were driving home with you, Walter, and you weren't on the show with us, what would you guys be listening to in the car?
Pretty much all the dad rock stuff that you would classify as dad rock. Big Wilco fan. Sometimes I tell Hunter, he goes, "Who the hell are you listening to?" I'm like, "This is a band called U2," and he goes, "YouTube." I have YouTube on my phone. I'm like, no, U2 and YouTube are totally different things, Hunter.
I got the free album too. Okay.
Oh, geez.
So did everyone in the whole world.
But the thing that Hunter has really, since I've owned the distillery, I've really gotten more and more into all the Kentucky sort of outlaw, if you call it outlaw country, I don't know what you call it, Kentucky country, the Sturgills and the Tylers and the all those guys.
Yep.
And I mean, I think Sturgill Simpson is just a genius, like
Absolutely.
Godfather of soul kind of dude. And so that's really, my musical interest has really gone, has taken a big turn that way.
Mm-hmm.
I will put a shameless plug in for the new Wilco album. I think it's really, really good, called Cruel Country. It's very, very good. It's very subtle and very, it takes a bunch of listens, but once it sort of grabs hold of you, it's awesome.
Okay.
So
I've kind of been off and on with Wilco over the years, but I'll check that out. Yeah. Now, Hunter, I know that you're into Sturgill Simpson and some things along those lines, right?
Yeah.
What else?
Tyler Childress.
Yeah.
It's mainly a stint, and it's this podcast at that point.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if we could go back in a time machine, who would you want to go see live that you never got a chance to see?
that one's super easy for me. Talking Heads. Talking
Okay.
Heads for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it'd be Johnny Cash.
Mhm.
I saw
See,
Johnny
Hunter, that was a great answer.
Cash.
That was a great
I think
answer.
that's the first time we've had Johnny Cash as an answer to that one.
Yeah, but that's a good answer.
I think it'd be pretty cool to be in
Yeah.
that jail and watch him play.
Yeah, that would be
Don't make it weird, Hunter.
So what era of Talking Heads? Where are we in the Talking Heads career arc?
Like maybe right before Stop Making Sense or
Yeah.
right after Stop Making Sense kind of era. I mean,
Yeah.
just to be able to see them, and they will never get back together.
No.
Chris France, the drummer, I don't know if I don't think it's widely known, but Chris France, the drummer of the Talking Heads, is actually from Fort Knox, Kentucky. So, and he wrote a book recently, and actually was in Kentucky, I think with Tina Weymouth, his wife, who was the bass player of the Talking Heads. I think they were doing a book signing in Kentucky, and I really wanted to go, and I missed
Wow.
it. But he heard about Three Boys, Hunter. I didn't even told you that story, and
Good, I wouldn't know who he was.
Yeah. So, but
I had no idea it was from Fort Knox, Kentucky. That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. I've about once a year I'll sit down and watch the Stop Making Sense concert video with a bottle of something, and by the end of that, there's a whole lot less of that bottle of something. But that's a good experience. I'm telling you. Stop Making Sense with a bottle of whiskey. That's a pro tip.
And David Byrne did this tour where and then it ended up on Broadway, and that it was streaming on maybe HBO or Disney or somewhere. And if you have a chance of watching that with a bottle of something, it's really good. It's really good. Lots of Talking Head stuff in there. So
we're gonna have to put Walter on the Drunken Facebook YouTube experience channel that we got going on, Kevin.
Yeah,
it's gonna have to happen.
Text threads.
Yeah, there's a Facebook direct message group between Alan and Steve Bayshore out at George Washington Distillery, where at random times of the day and night, you could get some YouTube video of something. It may be obscure, it may not be, but it can be completely out of left field. So Walter, we'll have to get you in on that.
Sign me up.
We'll have to get you in on that.
Yeah, you can tell whenever I'm drinking because it just becomes a bunch of new wave stuff, and then like me just saying things like, "You guys feeling this too?"
Very nice.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Good stuff.
A lot of fun. All right, so anything else music-wise that you guys are really into? Anything that was meaningful along the way? Maybe what was the theme to your prom, or the song that you danced to with your wife at your wedding, something like that.
Listen, Def Leppard is not an incorrect answer. I'm just going to throw that out there.
So growing up, my dad, all we would listen to was classic rock. So that's where the AC/DC, Def Leppard, Pink Floyd. That's just mainly what I listened to growing up until I went to college. That's pretty much on 24/7.
Yep.
Not much else.
Your dad's a good man.
Yep.
He raised you well.
Prom,
Walter?
I do not remember.
Prom, yeah.
Hunter, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to talk about the prom lights.
So if you ever want to,
how much have you had to drink,
show,
Walter?
come out here.
Wait a minute. You said this was the Facebook drunk channel, right? That we're on now?
Not necessarily this, but this leads to that.
It'll get there.
Gotcha,
It'll get there. It'll get there.
Well, music, I mean, and not to, this sounds like this isn't like a plug or whatever, but music has been, since I got down there, one of the other big things I've changed, I guess, is that we try to have music playing. I'm not sure Ross ever had music playing at the distillery. And so I'm acquiring an arsenal of speakers on top. If you've been down to the distillery, we have a kind of bottling room in the main still house part. We're not even using it for bottling anymore much, but on top of that little box, I'm slowly acquiring an arsenal of speakers, and like I'll roll in some speakers that I found at a yard sale or I got on Facebook Marketplace, and I was like, "Do we really need more speakers, man? Whatever." So, but anyway, and so then that sort of led to adding some lights, let's say, some colored lights, and so my
actually, you can see the green one right there and the purple one.
Hunter, this is playing into your favor, brother, because eventually he's going to have a fog machine, and then you get a cool theatrical entrance on tours.
There have been more discussions about the impact of fog machines on whiskey than I'd like to care to share, Alan. This is actually
a lot.
So we don't really know what's in that juice that they put in those things. And so we're like, maybe this was the secret ingredient that we.
It'd be all right. It'd be okay.
Yeah.
I'm at a Willie Nelson concert.
So Hunter would tell you that after a long week or a long day or just even a normal day sometimes, the music gets pretty loud after everybody leaves. The lights kind of change in the still house, and that's kind of my release from stress of everything we're doing. And so anyway, goodness, I just lost the phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yep.
Okay, good. So anyway,
you can't see you now though.
But music is just a big part, and I'm going to figure out what happened to my phone.
There you are.
Oh, you see me? Okay, good.
Now we don't.
Oh, now you don't.
He's the man in black.
Yes. All right, there you're there.
Okay, I'm back. Anyhow, that was a risky moment of vulnerability describing what Hunter calls the prom lights in our distillery.
Yeah. But
So,
I believe you guys are doing some live music there now, right?
we are. We've had a little
Yeah.
bit. We want to do more. I don't think we're. I don't know if we're going to like book big. Daggone it. I don't think we're going to be booking big concerts or anything anytime soon. But yeah, we've had some pretty awesome kind of singer-songwriters and small musicians come and play, and we want to do more of that.
Have you met Drew Crawley?
I
think we can.
Right there.
I think we can. I think
We can figure something out.
we can make a love connection here. No, I think that's great. I think that obviously we think that there's a real connection between music and whiskey, or we wouldn't be doing the show. But I think that a lot of the people that are into music deeply are also into whiskey deeply. It's not 100%, but Hunter, but you're good enough at one that will kind of bring you in honorable mention to the other. So no,
it definitely pairs well together.
Yeah, there is something about having a pour with music on that really fits for whatever may be going on in life.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys, we'll start wrapping this thing up. And as we do, we want to give everybody a chance to say where they can be found on social media. So, Walter, we'll start with you and whatever you've got in that regard.
Hunter would tell you how good I am at social media. Hunter, tell them where we're on social media.
So it's Three Boys Farm Distillery on all platforms. I think there's one that is not ours on Instagram. The same name as an old one. They got jettisoned, but other than that, that's all Three Boys Farm Distillery.
Yep.
Awesome.
And if you've not been out, you need to go. If you're thinking of traveling to bourbon country, you can go to all the big boys if you want to, but there's some others that you need to get to, and one of those is Three Boys. It's the whiskey's great, the experience there is great, and it'll probably be one that you'll remember more than the going to see the big guys, and you'll come away with something really special. So
that's my walking away from the distilling industry retirement job. By the way, I'm going to buy a short bus, and it's going to be real honest Kentucky distillery tours by a dumb Hoosier, and it starts at Three Boys and it ends at Three Boys.
So, Alan, where can people find you on social?
Real quick before I do my social, I do want to throw this out there because this is a music-based show. So a band that I got turned on to very recently, talking about Sturgill Simpson and Tyler Childers. So Four in the Strange Band, which is Hank III's son. Hank IV, he just goes by Four. And it is a fantastic album from start to finish. So be sure to check that out. You can find me at spiritsofFrenchLake.com, alchemistcabinet.wordpress.com, One Piece of Time Distilling Institute videos on YouTube and all my social media. And our products at Sillbox.com. If I didn't say it, I probably already said that. Whatever.
No.
It's all good.
What was the name of the album again?
So it's Four in the Strange Band. I don't remember what the name of the album is off the top of my head, but it's really good.
Did you I stayed in a hotel next door to him one time.
Oh yeah,
he looks just like Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, that's the other. So there's two Hank Fours. It gets confusing. So there's Four,
so
and then there's Hank Four.
One, yeah.
So Four, the one I'm talking about is the son of Hank III, and it's right in that same sort of like hillbilly kind of, sort of burlesque kind of thing.
Yeah,
very similar to that.
It's called Southern Circus.
Yes.
Never heard that.
Yep. See, we've all learned something tonight.
That's right.
Drew, how about you?
All right. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DrewCrawley63. I'll probably piss you off. I'll get pissed off because I'm on Twitter. And then Drew.Crawley63 on Instagram. That's the majority of my music stuff and some bourbon stuff as well. So follow at your own risk, I suppose.
Don't forget murdershagkill.com.
Oh, wow. Hey, Bourbon Turntable, you can find us on Facebook. We're on Instagram, a little bit on Twitter. We're nice people, so we don't, at least we try to be. So we're not on Twitter a whole lot because that's kind of for buttholes. But you can watch, if you want to watch the show and see these, the lovely faces of these five gentlemen, you can watch us on YouTube. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, as long as it's Apple, Spotify, or Google. So tune in. We've got some good stuff going on. We've got some great shows coming up. We've got our next show, which is Drew.
Yep. Music in the movies and whiskey in the movies. So we're talking movie soundtracks and then movies that prominently feature whiskey. And I'll just say I don't love scotch, but we'll probably talk about it anyway.
We will talk about it anyway. And we've got some other good stuff coming up as well. We've got Brian Hara, who's going to be on. He wrote a book called Bourbon Justice. He's going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk about lawsuits and legal battles in the music industry. So that'll be fun. We've got Lenny Eckstein from Deerhammer Distilling out in Colorado. And we've got Steve Gorman, who is the drummer for the Black Crowes, who's going to join us. So we've got some really fun stuff coming up. And our 1-year anniversary show will be a live show on September 7th. So we'll have that as well. So lots of fun stuff. So follow us on Facebook and Instagram, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and just stay tuned with what all we're doing. But on behalf of Drew, my co-host, Alan, our guest host, and our wonderful guest, Hunter Coffey, Walter Zausch. Thank you guys very much for being here. Cheers, love,
Cheers.
and free bird.
Been out of whiskey both times. It's unacceptable.
It's a rookie mistake, Alan Bishop. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Later.
y'all.